Hey, meaningful movers. Welcome back to Move With Me, the podcast where actions have meaning, words have meaning, and we open up the conversations to discover what's your next move. I'm your host, Krystal. It has been some time since I talked to y'all about my 5-year career journey. Yes, the word that we're going with is still transition as we finish up with my transformation. You know what? I think it is something special for someone to consider a company to call home. Listen, it takes a lot for me, specifically, to settle at one company and create roots. And when I say this, let me be very clear about that. When I was going into the office, you know how you have those little cubicles? Well, I didn't bring any personal pictures from home. I didn't bring any potted plants and other little things and trinkets and stuff like that to kind of sit around my desk and be like, this is my desk, this is Krystal's desk, or anything. The most I brought were some headphones and a fan, like a desktop fan, because I get hot in there. That was it. So I was always ready to move, go up and down, left or right, or whatever the wind blew. Okay. So this is pretty tricky because companies can say they are ready for the next generation of data analytics, but they don't really know what that truly means, nor what it takes, right? So you kind of get into a situation and accept a position and a role, anticipating that, hey, they've done their due diligence and that they are dedicated to this because they're going to hire me on this, right? And sometimes it just doesn't always turn out to be like that. So I'll take you through my last 2 years where I experienced the highs and lows of companies hiring resources before they are ready to execute the vision. All right. I like to call this section here promises. Okay. So when I left off, I was at a company where I had successfully executed conflict resolution. But due to the way that the culture was starting to shift because of that project and how I was being treated, as well as what I was observing some of the other team members getting treated, I basically threw up the deuce, okay? And I moved on to another full-time job, which was back in my old stomping grounds, data analytics, right? So I left the company. I was doing MDM, Master Data Management, left there and went to somewhere else doing data analytics. Now, I did stay on with the company that I was leaving for 2 months to help them transition my job, simply because they couldn't find anyone to replace me. One, nobody existed in the company that had my skill set that they could just kind of slot in for me temporarily. And two, they had recruiters out there trying to find somebody and that person wasn't coming available, right? And spoiler alert, folks, they still haven't replaced me. And this has been about 3 or 4 years ago. As an aside, though, if someone has a particular skill that is difficult to come by, wouldn't you be, nice to them? Now, I'm not saying to go above and beyond trying to please people, but there is a certain value that I was providing that no one in the company had. And that capability is very niche. So the availability of those resources is limited. And I'm not talking about in that company, in that organization, in that industry. I'm talking about in the world. That's really important. And that's why I say to be able to know your worth, and that way you can attach a monetary value to it. So the skills and expertise that I was providing, they didn't come cheap, baby. So that is the case. Why would you threaten that? You had someone solidly in the spot there. You kind of want to protect your interests. Well, anyway, let's move on. So this next job had a really good vibe. I mean, the team was nice, and I got a chance to learn a new technology and get my feet wet in some coding without being pressured. So the pacing was comfortable until we needed to start delivering. I was fine with this, but I didn't have anyone to kind of help me, right, to test for the quality of the work that I was putting out. Because if you build something, you typically have a team separately to test it, because then, obviously they don't have a set of expectations to go off of, right? So you usually kind of test something and then it passes all the tests or debugging, and then it'll get deployed into production and people can start using it. So this meant that I was sending out an untested and unverified product because there was no way I could test it. And I only had access to the test data, I guess. I don't know. It was really weird. It was kind of like everything that I was doing, and it was a rush job, and I'm not good with that. Anyway, boss said do it. I did it. So after a few weeks, I started noticing a change in my boss's behavior. Like he was getting more frustrated and more overwhelmed. This is so much so that he started cutting corners and making changes in the work that I was doing without my notice. Listen, when you're attached to something and you said, hey, it works, it's valid. And next thing you know, someone says, hey, it's not working. Can you check it and troubleshoot it? And I go back in there and I'm like, whoa, this isn't the code that I wrote. This isn't the work that I did. I didn't set this up this way. What's going on? So he needed to kind of stop getting and digging into that, right? And this is okay. You know what? The guy who was my boss, he is a super developer. So I can understand him wanting to get his hands in the mix of stuff and understand it. But it was just causing a bunch of chaos, a bunch of confusion. So fortunately, another person joined the team. Okay, she was hired and then she started got allocated to help me out. So she and I worked together to get things basically tied, and then we could identify areas where, well, we couldn't tie things and we figured out why so that we can bring that to the business. So this was great because she dealt with the same frustrations that I did with the data just being all wonky. And it started becoming where our opinion didn't matter and we just needed to do things. So we stopped being looked as an expert and started being looked as someone to just do. Now here's the thing. I don't mind just doing stuff because that is what it is. But I was getting paid a lot more to just be a doer. So I'm not going to complain. You don't want to strategize this? I don't need to do all the extra work of what this particular job role requires. I'm not going to do it. But I'm also not going to take the fall or any kind of accountability for decisions that were made and I wasn't consulted in. So I'm pretty clear about stuff like that. So, I got to a point where I told my boss, I will do whatever you want, but I'm not going to compromise the quality for fake results. Like, I'm just not going to fake stuff to look like it is successful. I don't do that. So if what the business is asking for isn't possible because the data just isn't there, then we can't make it up for the sake of appearances. You know what? I found this to be very common with folks in leadership roles. Always trying to fake the funk. And listen, being the hero isn't about delivering results at whatever cost. That's not the hero and that's not a leader. It's about delivering the truth, even if it isn't the desired outcome. That's where you stand out, doing what is hard but right, even when others are afraid to do it. All right? So not to digress too much further than that, after I refused to over manipulate the code and work some air quotes here magic, but really just fake some things. We had a tense couple of months and I had to tell my boss to, I guess stop. I was just stop changing my code, stop excluding me from conversations, stop solutioning, all that's my job. Okay. I kind of gotten to a point where I was like, I need to be included in this. I need to be a part of what is happening and you need to start listening to me. Start helping me resolve issues as close to best practice as possible so we can protect ourselves, start managing our concerns with the business, and let us know what the feedback and decisions are, and so on. I want to point something out here, that I offered a way forward, okay? So too many people will focus on all the things that are wrong without presenting a solution. And it's real easy for bitterness to take over when all the contributions you provide are negative. If you want to shine, call out the negatives and then follow up with suggestions for how you can improve your working relationship. I always say this, too many people are great at pointing out things that are just wrong. Too many people love to do that, and it's easy to do. You guys got to understand, it's easy to look at something and say, that's not working, that's not right. The difference is that there are people that come in and can say, but here's what does, and here's how we can do that. That is leadership, is to follow up with a solution, follow up with a strategy, and stop looking at things from a perspective of trying to call someone out. Because it's a double-edged sword. You can call somebody out, but the next thing is okay, well, if you say that's wrong, then you tell me what's right. Now, if you have no answer, it doesn't really matter that you said what they did is wrong. If you have nothing to come back with, then we're kind of still in a standstill. So you want to make sure that when you do offer up your voice and your opinion, make sure it's worth it. Well, anyhow, it turned out that my boss was taking a lot of heat from the unreasonable expectations that were made by his boss. So he was put in a precarious position to not undermine her, but also protect us. That's difficult. Also, he took my refusal to over manipulate code as a complete no, I'm not doing anything until it is perfect. Now, I calmly corrected him that he took what I said out of context. And I can't stand that, you guys. Like, I can't stand when I make a statement and people will just over ingest something into what that means and add additional layers of assumptions and things like that that are built into that. And it's like, I clearly didn't say anything about that. I also explained and said that I would never say no. I'm not going to do something that he directed me to. I'm sure people have experienced this with their subordinates. I don't really like saying subordinates, but the folks that report to them, when you kind of say, hey, go do this. I need you to do X, Y, and Z. Right? That's your job. Unless I'm telling you to do something that is unethical or puts us at risk, you kind of go do it. And I've had people come back and be like, nah, no. And it's been rare. It's a rare occasion. And trust me, when you do that to me one time, you are removing yourself out of other opportunities that come up. So be very careful when you tell someone no. Make sure it's followed up again by some level of justification or consideration on that. And then, of course, follow up with a solution. That gives you the bonus points, folks. All right. So without getting too techie about what I was telling him no to, I just stated that there is organizing the data and then there is creating data that is not there under an unverified assumption, just so we fill in gaps to make something be perceived as complete. That does not help us, nor does it help the people who are asking for this information. Can you think about that for a second? You're asking for information, and instead of me saying, hey, that doesn't exist, I'm going to make something up so that you think it does exist and that we're meeting your needs. Like, how long do you think you can keep that pretense up? I don't even start that. Well, actually, I've only been bitten by that bug one time and never again. So I'm a huge believer in truth first, then solutions will follow after that. I mean, to kind of go on that same vein, like who wouldn't want to know if there was something missing in your business process or information that you could correct it? Wouldn't you want to know that? I don't understand that, because that's exactly the purpose of the department that I was in, that he was leading, was to really catch the gaps, right? Show the business what they have and what they don't. And this is exactly why I speak in as many events and conduct programs and workshops targeted to leaders. They have the wrong impression about data, what it takes to get to a high maturity, and that it all depends on them, not us, as in those who create the reports, right? So like if your team doesn't put information in the system, how are we supposed to give it back to you? And you enter in your first name, you don't enter in your last name, and then we give you back exactly the first name and with a whole bunch of blank names, and they go, hey, we need last names. I'm like, yeah, go put them in there and then you'll see it. And then they will have leads that are like, no, just go put stuff in there. I'm using first name and last name just for the point of simplicity here, but they will say fill in the space for that. Like I'm telling you, the integrity in data analytics is sometimes why data analytics gets a bad rap, because people will cower behind telling the truth. They just won't do it. And you would think that sounds very logical. But like I said, again, there is this misconception that us in IT are just magicians that carry around wands in our back pocket. That just isn't the case. So again, after we got on a level playing field, we put our differences aside, including the passive aggressive comments from the both of us. Yeah, I slipped up on that. I couldn't take it at some points. Okay, I'm human. I mean, we were really getting pretty petty. So fortunately, we were emotionally mature and took accountability for both our parts, and our working relationship improved until someone from a high leadership position got laid off. Ugh. So this is important because the whole reason for the data analytics team being created was because of this person being the champion of that. So now with her gone, it became effective immediately for us to stop working on everything. I mean, I spent my days doing nothing. Well, I had clients from my consulting firm going, but this was my permanent job. Had all the benefits, the insurance and PTOs and all that good stuff. How long do you think they are going to let an entire team sit around? If you don't know, data analytics is expensive. The technology and the people who stand it up and keep it running. So, everyone just started looking silently. So here's the thing. By the time I put my notice in, my boss and the other team member that I worked with had already left. When I say they had already left, I mean they put their 2 weeks in and the 2 weeks had passed and they moved on. Okay, and I was still there. So, the writing was on the wall. I didn't panic because it is easy to get caught up in the what ifs and fool around and make a bad decision about where you go next. But I took this opportunity to think about what I really wanted to do. Now I realized I enjoyed data analytics and I had grown beyond coding and getting stuck under budget and under-resourced initiatives. I wanted to really be a thought leader, teach the company about data so that they value it, the way that I did. I wanted to not only be in the conversations about the initiatives, but lead them. Hey, I had my vision and I set off on that. I entertained interviews even if I was not looking to accept any offer. So I did this to just get some practice for the ones that actually counted and the ones that I cared about. So I started reading the room, air quotes here. I remember interviewing with this one company and I got to the 3rd round. Now I interviewed with the enterprise architect, if you can even call him that. And I say this because it was obvious that he was coasting. What I mean by that, for example, is you can join a company where you are the only one with a certain experience that no one would even question you. So you could give them the minimum and they would think that it was the best thing since sliced bread because they've never seen anything like it before. But you know that it is light work. Who's going to challenge you? So when I asked him questions like, okay, as the enterprise architect, what is the IT strategy or data strategy that you've put together for the company to work towards? He stumbled and even said that isn't his job. And even if he did have a strategy, it would not apply to me. My jaw dropped. Thank goodness that this was a phone interview with no video. So I finished the interview and his feedback to the recruiter was something lame, like the method of something that I preferred wasn't the most cutting edge or whatever. So, it was something so random and unrelated. I can't even remember right now what that was. I took it as he saw me as a threat to expose him for his BS in abusing the trust that the organization put in him. So just to be clear on this, I wouldn't have exposed him. As long as he stayed out of my business, I would do the same for him. But it would be hard to ignore the output that I would be producing compared to what he wasn't. So I guess in an off-putting kind of way, I guess I was one. Anyway, the recruiters did ask if I wanted to fight his feedback, which they would have won. But I said no, because that was a red flag for politics. I didn't want to spend my time watching over my shoulder, which would affect me emotionally and mentally. Why would I choose drama? No. There just wasn't any rush for this. Yet again, I was off to interview, and for some reason, I saw on LinkedIn a post by a recruiter about this awesome role. So I messaged him. We talked about it and my background, and you know what? He got me an interview. This company was thorough in the way that they want everyone in the leadership to be comfortable. So I interviewed with the C-suite executives. Now, let me clarify. I am no stranger to interacting and engaging with all the C-suite executives. So CIO, Chief Information Officer, CTO, Chief Technology Officer, CEO, Chief Executive Officer, CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, CFO, Chief Finance Officer, and etc. But that's always after I am hired. This time I interviewed with 2 chiefs and a couple of vice presidents. This time it was different because they were, honest. They weren't hiding behind snazzy language and overselling their progress. They were just like, we need data analytics that we trust. In a sense, it was non-existent, but they were doing what they could with the people that stepped up. I don't know. There was this feeling of belonging. It felt like what you would imagine a company who valued you treating you like they valued you. I'm not going to lie, I was hesitant because will everyone be like this? But I just couldn't find any reason to say no. It was a place that I could set my roots and build a legacy. Isn't that what everyone wants? To be remembered for the lives they touched. I mean, yes, I am talking about data, but this was an opportunity where I was seen as a thought leader, where I can bring passion to people about more than just data, but how it connects people. I have met lifelong friends by simply being in the grind of delivering data. I've converted others to appreciate what I do and break the stigma that my success depends on their satisfaction of what I do. I have the opportunity to bridge the void between business and information technology. Success and more were literally staring at me in my face. All I had to do was step forward. And you know what? That I did. I said yes. And I'm still as excited as I was on this very day of the offer. I'm not overworked. I am still able to write my books, coach, speak in various events, and keep my podcast. Most importantly, I feel appreciated. I feel valued. I am being recognized for my expertise, and I am presented with more opportunities. This isn't to say that if I didn't take this job, I wouldn't be experiencing the same success. I chose to look for a company where I could plant my seeds based on the culture I wanted, which deserves all I have to offer. That may come off as arrogant, but when you know your value, best believe you better stand on it. Now, don't get it twisted. I'm not giving up on any of my other ventures. Being an author, thought leader, professional speaker, and coach is my passion. I have zero doubt that this is my purpose in life. I plan to leave my mark with every interaction I have and place I go. It's in my blood. Even better, it's in my soul. Well, we had some golden nuggets, and I think we should add some ketchup just to recap. Number 1, finish strong. There are 2 kinds of people, critics and contributors. Critics thrive in finding all the flaws and problems without providing support. Contributors, well, they seek opportunities and solutions. Don't get me wrong, identifying problems is important, but you follow through with a suggested solution. People want to collaborate with others that look for results. Number 2, don't settle. Look at unfavorable moments as an opportunity to really outline what you want. This time is a gift to pursue you. Use it wisely. Identify your ideal work culture. Determine what is important to you and what you need from a company, whether it is an organization or your own. And number 3, dream big. Who said you can't do it all? That's the episode today. I hope you enjoyed this previous 5-year journey with me. Looking back, I saw myself become confident, hesitate, question my path, and then fan the flames of my passion back into full fire. I'm telling you, I bring the heat, and so can you. No one said this would be easy. It's terrifying at first and can become overwhelming as you find your way. Don't get discouraged and keep going. I challenge you to take a moment and reflect on your past 5 years. Put together what you want, then create an actionable roadmap for your next 5 years to work towards that which you desire. You will have steps and missteps, but that's the point, to learn, grow, and share. I do say all moves have meaning. Now tell me I'm lying. Make sure you guys subscribe to the show, Moving with Meaning the podcast, and tap that alert bell so you know when these episodes drop. I am on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and YouTube Music. Please share, like, repost, and follow. Tag someone. We are creating a community here. Quick housekeeping before you go. Follow me on Instagram at Moving with Meaning 82 and on Pinterest at Author KB Clark. Also, connect with me on LinkedIn. I do dabble in TikTok at Krystal B. Clark. My Etsy store has some handy dandy digital downloads. Lastly, run over to my YouTube channel and have a look or two. Links are in the episode. Alrighty, I'm Krystal on Moving with Meaning the podcast, reminding you to take it one step at a time. All moves have meaning. Check y'all later.